Devil Fruits, the most inconceivably ridiculously diverse power system in maybe all of anime. Asking what abilities they bestow upon their user is the equivalent of asking, what kind of crack did Oda smoke today and how will he draw it? Is it a bird? Is it a plane? Strap in, it's somehow both, and it makes even less sense than it sounds. But that's why we love One Piece, because Oda could take the most ridiculous concept, slap it on some of the most out-of-pocket character designs, and yet somehow 15 chapters later, we're loving them like family and can't imagine the story without them. So let's talk possibility. What if the founding two members of the Straw Hat crew, Nami and Zoro, received devil fruits of their own? What would they be? How would it suit them? Would it suit them at all? Let's find out. Disclaimer: the contents of this video contain heavy spoilers for pretty much the entirety of One Piece. You have been warned. Alright, on with the show.
Okay.
Luckily for us, we don't really have to look too far for an official answer to our question, because the main man, Eiichiro Oda himself, has already answered this very thought experiment in SBS Volume 98, giving out his picks for each Straw Hat if they had a devil fruit. But that's too easy of a cop-out, and hey, we've got a video to make. So while we're going to take a more in-depth look at our creator's choice, we're also going to throw in some of our ideas into the ring and see how they do. Nami. Starting out ladies first, we have possibly the most important Straw Hat on deck. Because without Nami, the Sunny isn't going anywhere anytime soon except to the bottom of the ocean floor. As the Straw Hat's expert navigator, cat burglar, financier, meteorologist, and possibly the only human being on Earth who instills genuine fear in Luffy, she packs a pretty big intellectual sucker punch, as easily as one of the smartest members on the crew, much to her dismay. It's pretty ironic that Nami is always the absolute last person to ever get into trouble, considering that she's the one actually driving our heroes toward all of it, usually with time to spare. It's a momentous amount of luck that Luffy found her as quickly as he did, considering the first person he picked up was, oh boy, Zoro. Forget One Piece, welcome to Where Piece. Thankfully, our hapless powerhouses have a compass to point them in the direction of the ass-whooping. So with all that being said, what's our top pick for Nami's devil fruit, assuming she'd get one? And that's a big assumption, because our girl loves herself a good bath, and I don't know if she'd be willing to shoulder the sea's hatred in exchange for a few magic tricks. Which is why, if we're making a bargain with Nami, especially Nami, we know better than to sell ourselves short. Which is why the first fruit and creator's choice would be the Goro Nami, or the Rumble fruit. That's right, none other than the fruit of the sparky moon-hopping Kami himself. Enel's lightning Logia fruit was Oda's top choice for our favorite cat burglar, and while it may seem like a bit of an inelegant power spike at first, if you give it a moment to settle, you start to see why this is the perfect move. Nami is a genius at weather manipulation, and we've seen her use her incredible affinity in the field to produce jaw-dropping feats of climate-based carnage with absolutely no powers whatsoever. And by the way, one of her main attacks in said jaw-dropping feats are, you guessed it, summoning lightning. Nami's relationship with lightning and electricity only strengthens down the line when she eventually adopts Zeus, Big Mom's sentient lightning generator. And we've seen how strong she is with that. Now imagine if Nami didn't just control lightning, but was lightning. We've seen how the potential of devil fruits have blossomed in the hands of intellectuals who specialize in the field of that specific devil fruit. Notably, Law's Ape Ape no Mi and Caesar Clown's Gasu Gasu no Mi, with their anatomical and chemical mastery being used to deconstruct, manipulate, and bend reality to their will. We presume a similar trend would happen with Nami, with her expertise allowing her to discover and invent more creative and powerful uses of lightning than we ever saw Enel use, making this already overpowered devil fruit even more overpowered. And if we factor in devil fruit awakenings with the already climate-centric abilities of the Rumble fruit, the scope of all of Nami's powers expand even more. But hey, that's the power of weather, and I suppose education. Stay in school, kids. All this would make some theorists say that such significant power-ups would skyrocket Nami to one of the top-ranked fighters in the Straw Hat crew. But that's not necessarily true. Nami isn't a fighter by nature. She's resourceful, cunning, and strategic, but she's not a drag-out bare-knuckle fighter, at least not by choice. So stronger opponents with advanced hockey techniques would be able to make quick work of her if she was sent out as a frontliner. But that's not how Nami rolls. She'd much rather use her powers to blitz out of trouble, swipe a few wallets, and attack from range. Nami's role, as a result, would be the greatest support unit on the planet, providing aerial and area of effect support for her more gung-ho teammates, which would pair especially well in combos with Luffy, who's immune to lightning. Pretty neat. The Straw Hats now have a terrifying storm to accompany their travels aboard the Sunny. But aside from Oda's favorite, what else would Nami get well with? Well, this leads us to our choice picks. The Wapu Wapu no Mi, or the Warp Warp fruit, and the Tori Tori no Mi, or the Bird Bird fruit. Van Augur and Pell's fruits would complement Nami well in different ways, but for the same reason, and that's in Nami's main role in the Straw Hat crew, navigation. As someone who frequently reads, charts and plots maps, follows complex routes, and has to make split-second navigational decisions on the daily, Nami would have to have a pretty unparalleled sense of spatial awareness, which is exactly what the Warp Warp fruit does. Manipulates distance and space between two objects. This allows obvious things like teleportation, sure, but imagine the possibilities when you consider battle positioning or mapping new routes. With her level of expertise, Nami would be able to produce some banger complex movements within seconds of surveying a situation. And secondly, but let's be honest, the most importantly, is the insane boost this gives Nami in pickpocketing. Nami's cat burglar hijinks would reach feverish heights if she could effectively warp anything within her line of sight straight into her hands. Of course, because of the fruit's limits, you'd have to remain focused in order to maintain the spatial warps. But hey, when is Nami ever more focused than when she's making money? And on the topic of Devil Fruit features, what happens when she awakens a Warp Warp fruit? Would she be able to then manipulate the spaces on maps themselves? Would she be able to rearrange geography to her will? Wow. Thinking about this more, this fruit has some real Gojo level implications on how it can be used, if put in the right hands. Let's hope Van Augur isn't too smart then. Because Nami could do some real damage with a fruit like this. Oh! But why the Falcon fruit? Well, that's just what I feel Nami would love to pick if given the choice. All she wants to do in life, besides rip off poor innocent bystanders, is chart a map of the world. And how much easier would that be with the ability to soar through the clouds? With her knowledge of wind patterns and currents, she'd make quick work on mastering aerial movement, and with falcons being one of the fastest birds in the world, she'd be pretty quick on her feet to boot. Above all, I think she'd just have a whole load of fun with the wings, and you can just see the inner child in her beaming at the freedom she'd reach through it. Okay, let's stop it there before it gets too soppy. Nami has a great roster of skills, so it's pretty easy to find a really balanced variety of fruits that would suit her really well. But what happens when you cash all those skills in for just one skill that you're just really good at? Zoro. The moss-headed, one-eyed, directionally challenged King of Hell himself. As the right-hand man of the Pirate King, Zoro's prowess in combat is second only to his truly abysmal powers of navigation. Seriously, 1,000+ episodes in and the Lost Piece gag never gets old. Finding a fruit for Zoro was way harder than first expected. And that's pretty much because Zoro just isn't the type of character who'd want a devil fruit in the first place. Why? Take your pick. As a swordsman, he may feel like having a fruit almost tarnishes his sanctity and honor, which muddies the care he's put into his techniques. He also wouldn't want the not-so-fun side effect of not being able to swim. Who's gonna pull Luffy's unconscious crackhead body out of the ocean when he falls in? Sanji? Hell no. Jinbei could too, but Zoro wouldn't want the indignity of not being able to protect his teammates. Or himself, for that matter, if he found himself in a watery grave. There could be a host of other reasons as to why Zoro wouldn't want a fruit, but the bottom line is that, unlike Nami, Zoro's absence of devil fruit powers seems like more of a deliberate choice over anything. So with that in mind, let's look at the creator's pick. Wo no Mi, model Seiryu, or Scale Fruit, model Dragon. Oda pulled a big brain here in his choice for Zoro's fruit, by giving it not to the man himself, but to his swords. It's not unusual to forget that objects can eat devil fruits too. Well, as much as an object can conceptually eat something. And this would actually work really well with Zoro, because it's just a new level of mastery he would have to achieve over sword arts, without sacrificing any of his dignity or aquatic prowess. And while effects of objects with devil fruits definitely vary, they're most dynamically seen when given Zoan devil fruits, because said fruits contain the animal will of whatever model they're sporting. So in the case of Kaido's mythical Scale fruit, Zoro's swords would be imbued with the will of a literal dragon. And if that energy doesn't match perfectly with the all hands no smoke black bandana energy of Roronoa Zoro, then I don't know what else will. Hype aside, having a mythical dragon sword comes with the standard Zoan package of increased strength, speed, and now additionally, fire breathing. This would also give Zoro access to flight, flame clouds, blast breath, and all of Kaido's standard attacks, assuming he can tame the thing. Which brings us to the matter of timing. Like Zoro did with Enma, it's very likely that Zoro would have a form of probation period with the sword before he can go all Genji from Overwatch with his attacks. He'd have to prove himself a worthy master to wield the proud soul of a dragon, which is also why I feel like this fruit can't be put into Enma, because Enma's will and the Zoan's will would likely clash. So slot that bad boy into another sword, potentially the one his master gave him, and after that point, the possibilities are endless. It would be perfect to incorporate into Zoro's already animal-themed attacks. 180-pound phoenix? Try 10,000-pound dragon! And combined with armament and eventually Conqueror's haki, this boost gives Zoro a unique and powerful edge, befitting of his Wano heritage. On that same logic, it would also work to have different mythical Zoan fruits imbued into different swords. A great candidate would be Marco's Tori no Mi model Phoenix, because on one hand, that's already the name of one of Zoro's attacks, and secondly, having a literal phoenix to support you on the battlefield would be a huge addition to your battle roster. The healing properties of Phoenix Flames in particular would be especially helpful for our deadly swordsman, considering how many life-threatening injuries he sustains from his battle. Plus, it would just be so cool to see a phoenix-shaped slash explode out of Zoro's blades. Overall, a roster of mythical supporters to live within his already supremely powerful swords, healing him and otherwise buffing him would be a great addition to an already powerful character. Okay, but what about a devil fruit for Zoro himself? Well, we have a bit of a radical answer to that one. Hito no Mi model Reaper. Devil fruits are dreams, or rather, we've learned in One Piece's latest chapters that devil fruits are the products of someone's desire to be something. And hey, let's be honest, there are some dark, twisted souls out there whose desire or purpose is to become death. Just ask Oppenheimer. So while we haven't seen it yet, it's not a stretch for a human-type mythical Zoan fruit to exist in the model of a certain scythe-wielding ferryman of the underworld. And as Zoro's newly crowned moniker suggests, with certain ambiguous foreshadowing left open-ended for now by Oda, it seems that the future world's greatest swordsman may have a closer relationship with death than meets the eye. So from a very aesthetic and now kind of thematic standpoint, given the demonic, awe-inspiring aura that surrounds Zoro's blades, it would be fitting to have a devil fruit that truly inspires the idea that death has finally come for you. In the same way that Luffy's sun god appearance serves as a light brought down to humanity, Zoro as the Reaper could serve as a reminder that all things come to an end, even the rule of evil and corruption. But what would a Grim Reaper even look like in One Piece? Would Zoro have to wear a hood? Would his skin go pale? Who knows? The amazing thing about One Piece is that there's no idea too crazy to fit in its story. It's a beautiful love letter to unbound creativity, which is what makes hypotheticals like this so much fun. But at the same time, there's still so much strong characterization. There are distinct characters that have distinct morals, philosophies, and habits, to the point that each personality can be attributed to their own wild devil fruit ability and make perfect sense. And beloved characters like Zoro and Nami may have been the focus of this video, but you could go around and do this for every character in the show. But what do you think? Are there better fits for the two straw hats? What do you think a death fruit would look like? Do you think Nami has what it takes to surpass NL? Leave your answers in the comments below.